Hello guys, this is SoulSnatching. Well, for this time I thought that I would do something different than just reviewing one of the versions of Mortal Kombat on one of the platforms, either PC or the arcade or PlayStation or whatnot. And for this time I thought that I would just talk about Mortal Kombat 3. The reason behind that is that I actually love, just watching videos on YouTube regarding Mortal Kombat reviews, and one thing that I noticed is that most people are basically on, or the center is basically usually on Mortal Kombat 1, Mortal Kombat 2, or MK3 or one of the newer Mortal Kombat like Mortal Kombat 9, but for some reason Mortal Kombat 3 has never been in the focus, so to speak. So this time I thought that I would just devote this video to Mortal Kombat 3. What you can see on the screen right now is basically I got my computer hooked up to my HD TV, and I'm running MAME on it, and I must say that the game looks awesome in MAME on HD TV. So the graphics are just crisp. There's basically very little amount of pixelation, and it just looks pretty good on the big screen. And I also got controller set up for this one, so I can play it through the HD TV and basically all of the Mortal Kombats. So what's the deal about Mortal Kombat 3? Well, for me it seems like that Mortal Kombat 3 is or has always been regarded as being not one of the successful Mortal Kombats in the series, and in this regard it's pretty much just kept almost on the same rank as maybe Mortal Kombat 4, and MK3 is always regarded as being the top notch after Mortal Kombat 2. However, for MK3 I would say it's really cool in player versus player, but in one player or single player mode it just sort of lacks something, and it really isn't that great. However, Mortal Kombat 3 for me is really one of my favorite games in the series after Mortal Kombat 2. Sorry, I'm just sipping some beer while I'm talking. So basically I can still remember the day when this came out in the arcades back in my hometown, and basically everybody was just rushing there. Back in those days we didn't have any internet or any sort of stuff like that, and basically all the information that we had was coming from gaming magazines. And where I live is basically or where I used to live, my hometown is basically a pretty good holiday resort here in Hungary. However, this also means that you only have big traffic around the summer, when most people are coming to the lake and visiting the beaches, and that's why you got big life going on, and that's where the arcades where I used to live were open and were operating. So basically we had to wait like I think it was about a year or something like that. I mean, we already knew about Mortal Kombat 3 from the gaming magazines around September. However, back at those days, the arcades were closed, so we didn't have any chance, playing it or seeing it actually. However, we did have, some screenshots in the magazine, some, small reviews about it, and there were also some guys, who were the other arcades, like to the capital. Where you had arcades going on all around the year, not just in the summer. So we basically were being fed stories by those people with regards to Mortal Kombat 3, and how great it was, or you know, what was lacking or whatever. And basically we've been waiting to, you know, just get our hands on this game in the arcade since September, so it took us quite a lot of months. And I can still remember that I didn't manage to get the original magazine where Mortal Kombat 3 was featured first, with all of the, you know, character moves and yeah, some screenshots. However, I did manage to get a photocopy of it, and I've been just, you know, sort of stashing that 2 or 3 pages from that magazine throughout the year, and basically you know, learning all the moves in advance, and you know, stuff like that, and just, you know, keep on looking on the few screenshots that were supplied with the game. However, it was, you know, pretty exciting to do it this way, because especially in the last 2 months, you can call me crazy, but you know, all I had on my mind was, you know, when I would first get into the arcade, who would I be choosing first? And you know, I already knew the character roster. Unfortunately, you know, Scorpion was missing, Sub-Zero was there, but you know, in a pretty much different form than he used to be. And I was pretty glad, because I saw that they had introduced a new type of character that isn't human, which was Shiva, basically a female Shokan, like Goro and Kintaro, only a bit smaller. And this time it was being, you know, she was being included as a playable character, so I was pretty excited about her, and I definitely wanted to play her first, you know, just to finally be able to play a Shokan. Of course, when I got to the arcade, you know, I was shaking like, you know, like an idiot due to the excitement, and of course I selected Shiva, and I think I managed to get up to the 3rd guy, or maybe the 4th, when I played it first, but I pretty much got my ass handed to me. So I remember that, you know, after that I just, you know, started experimenting around with one of the cyborg ninjas, and that was being Sector, and I think I managed to get to a decent level with him with regards to, you know, single player mode in a couple of days. And I think after a week I've almost managed to beat the game. I managed to get up until calm, but it took me like, you know, a month of gameplay on the arcade machine to finally figure out how to beat him in MK3. Maybe I got a bit sidetracked here, so going back to topic with regards to Mortal Kombat 3, and about its place within the series. So Mortal Kombat 3 was basically, you know, the next release after Mortal Kombat 2, and there was a huge sort of expectation in face of it. I mean, it was following, you know, 2 games in terms of, you know, climbing quality and, you know, character roster and basically gameplay and everything. So there was a huge sort of excitement and expectations in face of Mortal Kombat 3. When I first saw it in the arcade, I was, you know, just blown away by the graphics. I mean, Mortal Kombat 2 expanded, you know, way above Mortal Kombat 1 with regards to graphics, background, character animation, and, you know, colors, everything. But, you know, Mortal Kombat 3, you could just see that you know, they haven't, you know, really changed the technology that they used to produce the game with. I mean, with digitized graphics and, you know, the backgrounds and everything, but clearly you could see that there was, you know, more technical stuff involved, and all in all, graphically, I mean, quality-wise, it, you know, it looked definitely better and sharper even than, you know, Mortal Kombat 2 was. However, Mortal Kombat 2 had, for me at least, you know, much more charm to it, just because of the actual setting and the story where it was playing basically in outward. So it was just great to see those, you know, areas, the new characters in Mortal Kombat 2, and then, you know, King Taro and Shao Kahn being introduced as well in Mortal Kombat 2. So basically they just, you know, top Mortal Kombat everything in every way. You know, even in gameplay, fatalities, content, you know, everything was there. So after seeing this, you know, you really had, you know, high expectations for Mortal Kombat 3, and graphically I think they really managed to improve on Mortal Kombat 2 from a technical perspective. However, it didn't look as appealing as Mortal Kombat 2. I mean, even though, you know, the backgrounds have, you know, more color to them, or have maybe more stuff in the background, still you don't get, you know, as much excited after seeing the portal or the living forest or the wasteland, you know, just seeing, you know, some sort of street in an urban area. Even though it looks cool, you know, and, you know, everything is animated, you know, pretty nicely, just, you know, not the same. And I think this goes for pretty much most of the backgrounds in Mortal Kombat 3. I mean, they are of, you know, very high quality, but for some reason they just look, you know, a bit more casual and not that spot on as they used to be in Mortal Kombat 2. Just because, you know, Mortal Kombat 2, the setting was in Outward, and the creators could, you know, just go any way they wanted to, and Mortal Kombat 3, you know, just took more sort of urban type. And the other thing that sort of I was missing from here, and it's basically explained in the story of Mortal Kombat 3, that Shao Kahn rips, you know, all of the souls from Earthrealm, and basically there's nobody left except for the warriors of Earthrealm to fight. And you can really see this, you know, in the backgrounds. I mean, everything is, you know, pretty much lifeless, desolated, and I think it's almost, you know, constantly sort of night or dark on every background, with the exception of I think the bridge level. On every other level, you know, it's dark, and there are no living creatures to be seen in the background. Correction, in the Soul Chamber you will get additional, you know, sort of MK3 style monk in the background, but that was it. There was basically, you know, no life. By Mortal Kombat 2, you know, you had, you know, like things flying around in the background. You had Khan's arena, monks hovering. And all this stuff that, you know, apart from the background, made it feel, you know, really alive. And for Mortal Kombat 3, although it looks cool, it just, you know, pretty much deserted and empty, and it sort of sets, I think, a darker tone to the whole thing. And but anyway, so much about graphics. With regards to the characters, the Mortal Kombat 1, they started up with 7 selectable characters from the start. Mortal Kombat 2, this was expanded to 12, and now in Mortal Kombat 3 you had 14 plus 1, the plus 1 being Smoke, who could be unlocked in the arcade version, and then it would, you know, just stay in the memory, and you could keep on selecting him. I think Mortal Kombat was pretty much successful because of the ninjas, 2 ninjas that they were introduced right in the first game, Sub-Zero and Scorpion, and I think pretty much all of them, you know, were like right away cast as the, you know, the standard Mortal Kombat characters that you have to have in a game to be successful, and also they have to be, you know, ninjas like they used to be, because that's what people loved. However, in Mortal Kombat 3 they got rid of them, and there were no classic ninjas available in the game. Instead of them you would get, you know, Sub-Zero, just in an alternate way, so-called unmasked version, who was actually, and is actually, I think, pretty cool. It just, you know, doesn't really feel the same. I can still remember when I was first, going through the, character select screen, and I knew that he was in the game, and I was just, looking for him, and I couldn't find him. And first when I saw his face on the character select screen, I just thought that he was, some sort of clown with that, red mark or red scar around his eye. And he turned out to be Sub-Zero, and he was actually one of the better characters and enjoyable characters in Mortal Kombat 3. However, Scorpion was missing completely, so that was, I think, a huge letdown for all of the hardcore Mortal Kombat players. What you would get, instead of Scorpion and some of the missing characters was the introduction of the new type of ninjas, mainly the cyborg ninjas, who pretty much resembled, the Predator creature from the movies, just in a more slicker version. I mean, their face, and then their whole outfit is just, completely sort of modeled, I think, after the Predator. And actually, they turned out to be pretty playable and fun characters, and they are up to this day. Cyrex and Sector are my favorite characters ever since they were introduced. And then you would get additional characters like Nightwolf, who was, I think, an okay character, and the other guy being Striker, who is just being displayed now. And yeah, he was pretty much the least favorite guy of everybody, because he didn't really resemble any sort of hero or Mortal Kombat-ish character that you would have seen. I mean, just imagine this guy in Mortal Kombat 2, how odd he would have looked like there. So, but he is basically like, a policeman, and just in a normal casual police dress with a cap on his head. So he doesn't look cool, even though his moves might be cool. You just don't want to pick him, or at least I didn't want to, because he didn't look that cool, and because of that it wasn't that much of a fun playing him. Now, Kuno and Sonya were brought back for Mortal Kombat 3. I really like Kuno in Mortal Kombat 1, but I didn't really got to like him in Mortal Kombat 3 at all. So he's a pretty good player or character to choose in 1 versus 1 game, but again, the CPU is not that much fun to play. And again, the same goes with Sonya. Her I didn't even like in Mortal Kombat 1. She was okay, but I would pick her out of from 10 games, I would choose her like once. So because I usually just gone with Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Kuno, Raiden, and Johnny Cage. And of course we got Cinda, who was also newly introduced character, and actually she was pretty cool. I really liked him or her in Mortal Kombat 3. I think she was a pretty cool addition, and the other guy being Cabal, who just after I learned his combos and his special moves, he just instantly became one of my favorites. Although he looks like shit, I think. I mean, this whole dress that he wears is just some brown trousers with a toy mask on his face, but still his moves were awesome, and he was pretty much fun to play. And then of course you got Kung Lao as well. He was one of my favorites in Mortal Kombat 2. It took me a while to get sort of used to him in Mortal Kombat 2 and get to learn how to properly play him. But in Mortal Kombat 3 he was just not that easy to play for me. I mean, in single player mode I always prefer characters that have sort of a disabling move, or some sort of move that would give you a free hit, like teleport punch, or plasma net, harpoon, freeze move, whatever. And the other shocking thing was I think my second favorite character, Johnny Cage, was just completely, missing from Mortal Kombat 3, and I think pretty much, the hardcore fans already know by this time, what happened with the Mortal Kombat 3. I mean, Elizabeth Malecki, she was portraying and playing Sonya in Mortal Kombat 1, and did some, video captures for Mortal Kombat 2 as well. Basically she was just, standing around bound with chains next to Shao Kahn on Shao Kahn's arena in Mortal Kombat 2. However, there were some issues going on with the original actors, Daniel Pesina and basically with Elizabeth Malecki, who were doing some advertisements against or for, I think Daniel Pesina was doing an advertisement showcase in Johnny Cage suit for an arcade machine called, I think, Bloodstorm, which was also sort of, made like Mortal Kombat 1 with digitized graphics, just in a much shittier quality, and basically the whole game is shit. So it's worthwhile to check out because it's ridiculous to see how bad it is. And I think Daniel Pesina, the guy who portrayed Cage, was also playing there and playing a guy who looked pretty much similar to Johnny Cage. So after that, Midway just got sort of rid of him, and they haven't employed him ever since then, unfortunately. Just on a side note, Daniel Pesina is on Facebook, and he's a pretty generous guy in face of Mortal Kombat fans, and I sent him a friend invite, I think like a half year ago, with a small message, and he was pretty cool because he accepted it, and there are a lot of interesting photos stored from Mortal Kombat 1, Mortal Kombat 2 era, while they were making the actual game, that they recorded it, and he pretty much had them on VHS. He put some of those videos on YouTube earlier this year. Unfortunately, Warner Brothers just took it down completely. Those were basically excuse me those were basically videos showing how the actual game was made, how the character animation was being recorded, and it's hard to find, but there are some sources still on the internet which have this footage. Mainly, I think Kuno, Johnny Cage, I think maybe Scorpion and Sonya doing the moves, and you got John Tobias there in the background, Ed Boon, instructing them, so it's pretty cool. So all in all, going back to Daniel Pesina, like I said, he's a pretty generous guy, and if you are interested, I think you should just go up on Facebook, give it a try, try to get sort of friends with him, and then you could just see some additional stuff from him on his photo albums. And yeah, I think it's a pretty cool or a pretty nice treat to any Mortal Kombat fan to have one of the original actors as a friend on Facebook. We are of course not pals. I mean, I haven't really talked to him. We just exchanged a couple of small messages. I wouldn't even call him here, but it's still nice to have him on my friend list, and occasionally I used to check on him, and so yeah, I mean, he was playing one of my favorite guys in Mortal Kombat, and for me Johnny Cage is still Daniel Pesina, so that's period. And yeah, he was also Scorpion and Sub-Zero and all of the male ninjas in Mortal Kombat 1 and 2. So yeah, like I said, it's worthwhile to check him out on Facebook. Anyway, so going back to Mortal Kombat 3, so unfortunately due to this he wasn't cast, and I don't know whether because of this they decided to get rid of the ninjas completely, or they just wanted to go in a different direction and just try to bring more fresh material and introduce new characters to the mix. So they haven't basically recycled or used the old ninjas that were in the game, unfortunately. And Johnny Cage was missing as well, presumably dead in Mortal Kombat 3. However, it was cool that he was featured on at least as a gravestone, or his gravestone was featured on the graveyard stage. And there were also always lots of rumors about being able to unlock and sort of summon Johnny Cage somehow on the graveyard stage. I actually saw some of the gaming magazines to display an actual description of how to get him appear and stuff like that. And so back in those days it really looked like this could be done. However, of course nobody could do it because he just wasn't there. It just was false hype or hoax, but still it was pretty cool. With regards to gameplay, they completely changed the mechanics with Mortal Kombat 3. They added much more speed to the game, and first of all with the introduction of the run button. I must say that in the beginning nobody really used the run button at all once we started up playing Mortal Kombat 3, because first of all it just felt out of place. There you can see Cage's gravestone in the background. So first of all it just felt sort of out of place. It wasn't that easy to handle on the actual arcade controller. However, in time we learned that it was really necessary and useful, and learned how to use it properly. So I think it was a great addition to Mortal Kombat, and it's definitely one thing that I'm missing from Mortal Kombat 9, which was released just a couple of months ago, or maybe 2 months I think in total. But that game could definitely use some sort of a run function. You have dash, but that's just not the same. And the other thing was the introduction of combos and the brand new combo system. I mean, you could sort of do combos in the old Mortal Kombat as well, but those were rather juggles. Here you had a so-called Dialog combo system, which meant that you had to memorize and utilize specific button combinations in the same order to get the animation and the combos going. And well, the positive side of this was that you could actually learn the combos, because you always had to perform the same set of moves. And since every button was sort of standardized and every character move was standardized with high punch, low punch, high kick, low kick, a block and run, which I really miss from Mortal Kombat 9. I don't know why they haven't. I mean, if they decided to do classic Mortal Kombat, they just should have reverted back to utilizing the same button layout as well. I mean, for me it would have made sense, and this was always something that set Mortal Kombat apart. I mean, it was pretty much easy to pick up and play after a while. Just because at least every character, although had different special moves, they could at least use the very same button layout. Now in Mortal Kombat 9 it's all over the place, and for me, I mean, up to this day I have played pretty much most of the characters, but when I play online I have like a roster of 6 guys, I think, who I'm really good with and kick ass. Just because for the other guys I can't seem to remember the combos or button config or special moves or whatnot, and not to mention fatalities. Just because for me it's fucking hard to memorize, you know, square, triangle, X, and you know, stuff like that. It's not as how should I say, memorable or easy as, you know, high punch, low punch, and I straight away had the whole layout in front of me. So anyway, going back to Mortal Kombat 3, I think this was, you know, a great addition, and I know that a lot of people were bitching about, you know, the new combo system, that you had to learn the moves and learn the combos in order to be successful, and that it was, you know, complicated and not just, you know, that easy to pick up and play. However, I think, you know, over the time they are not that difficult, and you only need a couple of sets of combos to use with Mortal Kombat 3 per character. You don't need to know all of them in order to be successful. You just rather need to know how the AI works. The AI in this one, I think, was the best AI that was ever there in a Mortal Kombat game in the classic area. So Mortal Kombat 1 was okay, but it was pretty easy to beat the computer. I mean, in the end, you know, all it did just, you know, just walk towards you, Mortal Kombat 1, and you could always go fancy, but you could pretty much easily beat him or beat the computer with using high fly kicks only. And I'm just gonna press the start button. I'm not gonna play. I just want the sound to come back. And I'm gonna basically let computer kick my ass, because I'm not gonna, you know, control the player at all. And the other thing that I think is great in Mortal Kombat 3 is the introduction of the separate ladders. I mean, now you don't have to sort of fight all of the guys that are there in the roster, and can basically choose how many you want to fight from the 3 ladders, and also on what difficulty you want to fight. And you could do this in the arcade, which was, I think, pretty convenient stuff, and I think it was also necessary. Although I love Mortal Kombat in the arcades, you know, this type of game is about, you know, getting as many people to play as possible, and you have to get them to drop in their coins, you know, play a couple of minutes and then, you know, go away, next guy, or just have them, you know, replay again. In Mortal Kombat 2, after a while, it wasn't that hard to beat the CPU, and even with 1 coin or 1 credit, you could just, you know, play up to, you know, 15 minutes, which in profit didn't mean that much. While in Mortal Kombat 1, the problem was that you had, you know, only a character roster of 7, and then you had to basically, after beating the 7 guys, you know, just recycle them and do sort of a rematch in a form of endurance mode. Basically, that's the only reason that the endurance mode was there, because you know, there wasn't that many guys to play. So I mean, the game just would have ended, you know, too suddenly and too early. So at least that way it gave it a challenge. In Mortal Kombat 3 you had a character roster of 15, so to play through all the 15 guys, it can take, you know, quite a lot of time, and I think this was a pretty decent idea to introduce. And I think being able to choose from separate ladders and difficulty and how many players you want to fight is, I think, actually a pretty good idea, and should be brought back in future Mortal Kombat games. With regards to the whole feel of the game, I liked it very much. I mean, like I said, although it was desolate and sort of deserted compared to Mortal Kombat 2, it was pretty much a decent game on its own, and a memorable Mortal Kombat. First of all, I didn't really understand the story with what the hell was going on with Cinda being reborn on Earth, which started basically like 10,000 years ago, and I didn't really understand what the hell Shao Kahn was doing here again. Although I liked him pretty much, and I was glad that he was back. But I, kicked his ass in Mortal Kombat 2, and he was basically shattered to pieces. So it didn't really explain at all what was happening. However, the story was cool in Mortal Kombat 3. I liked it, and I also like the way that it, displays sort of the background information, and the intro is done sort of a separate way than it was in Mortal Kombat 2, where you had just basically, the intro or the background story being told you on a couple of screens, and then you had some sort of awesome music and just gameplay footage, which I think till up to this day was the greatest sort of intro in any sort of classic arcade game that's featured in Mortal Kombat 2. In Mortal Kombat 3 I like the new sort of intro and backstory telling as well, because the backstory seems to be much bigger. I love these pictures. I mean, they just look awesome, and whoever did this, from the team, did a really good job with it, and you get a lot to know about the game, and for me at least, it was enough to get me immersed into the game and get into the mood completely. The other highlight of this game, I think that should be mentioned, is the sound. Sound was getting better and better ever since Mortal Kombat 1. In Mortal Kombat 1, due to the technology, they just had a sort of simpler soundboard. It wasn't that complex. You couldn't do that much stuff with it. However, then Ford did really a great job on it. But with Mortal Kombat 2, having a proper soundboard included with the PCB, which is basically the game itself, or it's like a motherboard if you haven't seen an arcade machine from the inside yet, which basically stores all the ROMs and everything that gets the game going. And in Mortal Kombat 2, they just managed to achieve basically CD quality audio in terms of music and sound effects as well. Now, if I look on the classic Mortal Kombat, I think up to this day Mortal Kombat 3 is the game that has the best sound from all the classic Mortal Kombats, especially with regards to the soundtrack. Like I said, the soundtrack in Mortal Kombat 1 was cool, dark, and it was sort of an Asian feeling to it. Mortal Kombat 2, it was just mind-blowing how fucking awesome that was. And then came Mortal Kombat 3 along, and first I didn't even realize how fucking great the soundtrack was. I mean, when I was playing this in the arcades, in the arcade you have several machines around in the place, and there's a huge noise. Kids running around, everybody's laughing, cheering, or shouting, or whatever. It's hard to really I mean, you can hear the sound alright, but it's hard to pick out the actual beat or the melody that's going on. It was when I received the PC version first, which had for Mortal Kombat, the PC version, which had CD quality music. It was then when I realized how fucking awesome the soundtrack of Mortal Kombat 3 is, and it is up to this day one of my favorite soundtracks. I mean, just amazing what Dan Forden has managed to put together here. So I think without him, Mortal Kombat wouldn't be as popular or as epic as it is for me at the moment. So here we are on a temple stage or church, and this beat or this tune that's going on in the background is just amazing. However, from Mortal Kombat 3, my all-time favorite tune would be probably the music from the bank stage, and then basically the pit 3 or Shao Kahn's sort of throne room, or I don't know how you could call it. So those were the two great soundtracks or scores that I loved in this one really much. But all of the other ones are outstanding. I mean, if I just think of the Soul Chamber music, I'm getting goosebumps right away. So it's just amazing what that guy made with this soundtrack. So all in all, I'm gonna wrap this up, and unfortunately it wasn't as successful as Mortal Kombat 2, and I think primarily it was a lack of many things, or not just a lack, or basically some issues with the game. Not having Scorpion, that's definitely a minus, and completely missing on the classic ninjas was also not a smart move, I think. And after Outward and seeing the scenes there, I mean, Deadpool, Living Forest, the tower, or the portal, you just wouldn't really give a shit about the subway or the street or a rooftop, even though it looked cool. I mean, it was just not the same. I mean, people were expecting something more. I know that people liked it when it came out first, but after playing it like 3 months, everybody was like, okay, that's pretty cool, but it would be nice to have a Mortal Kombat 2 machine as well, and just to go back. And back in those days, we were already talking about old school in terms of Mortal Kombat. So Mortal Kombat 2 and 1 were old school compared to Mortal Kombat 3. Nowadays, everybody's or at least me, I'm taking Mortal Kombat 1, 2, 3 and MK3 in the same category as being classic and old school in the face of the new Mortal Kombat, which is Mortal Kombat 9 and basically Mortal Kombat Gold. I regard that as a standalone game as well, and I wouldn't even mention Deadly Alliance, Deception and Armageddon, because in my opinion, I mean, Deception was okay, but Armageddon was just fucked up, and Deadly Alliance had okay in story-wise and atmosphere, but the gameplay wasn't there, and it was just basically G.I. Joe figures hitting each other, so it was shit. Mortal Kombat 4 had many problems, and Mortal Kombat Gold as well, but that still felt like classic Mortal Kombat, and I really like that up until this day. So Mortal Kombat 3 is, I think, one of the big classics, and actually I'm not sure, but I just read a couple of weeks ago that they are going to release downloadable version for PS3 and maybe Xbox 360 of Mortal Kombat 1, 2 and MK3, and I might be wrong, but I didn't see MK3 being listed there, although I think MK3 is completely different from MK3, and in terms of single player mode, this is the one to have due to the gameplay, due to the proper AI, and but due to the game itself. I mean, MK3 is just it's basically MK3 with a fucked up AI. It's not fun playing against the computer at all. You have more characters, more backgrounds, which isn't true in fact, because you got several new backgrounds in addition to Mortal Kombat 3, but you have to keep playing through those stages all over again, and you hardly get to see any other stages than those 4 or 5 new stages that were being introduced there, which is a shame. And oh yeah, this is backstage. There's beautiful music going on in the background. which is I think one of the best, you know, tunes ever composed for Mortal Kombat. And oh, just one thing crossed my mind which I forgot to mention completely, but I think was or had a pretty big chunk in making Mortal Kombat 3 in not one of the most memorable Mortal Kombats, and those were the fatalities basically, and the finishing moves, so friendships, fatalities, and stage fatalities, whatever. Problem here was that in Mortal Kombat 2, I mean, they just, you know, topped the fatalities compared to Mortal Kombat 1 completely. You had, you know, 2 fatalities per character, you had friendship moves, you had fatality moves, and you had 3 awesome stage fatalities. In Mortal Kombat 3, you still have, you know, your 2 fatalities per character. However, most of the time they just look like shit. Most characters are using the same sort of animation, or, you know, or part of the animation for the finishing moves, and it just, you know, it's more funnier in terms of, because it doesn't look that gruesome. When I first saw, you know, Baraka impale Kitana or Milena on his spikes, I literally got sick almost, because that was fucking brutal. Now in Mortal Kombat 3, I couldn't really list any, you know, such memorable fatalities, because they just look shit, and, you know, after a while you just, you know, don't even wanna do them. They just you know, feel like, you know, uppercutting or roundhouse kicking your opponent. And the other problem was that, you know, you had pretty awesome stage fatalities in Mortal Kombat 2 and even Mortal Kombat 1. That pit fatality was just awesome in the first one. Here it's pretty lame, and I mean the subway fatality would be cool, but it's just, you know, not executed, you know, in a proper way. You just got a picture of a subway running past in the background, hitting the guy, and, you know, it just looks shit. I like the Bear Tower stage fatality, where you would just, you know, uppercut them and they would fall through the floors and then hit the spikes below. But not because of the visuals, due to the audio, because they are screaming like, you know, 10 or 15 seconds long, and I know it's sick, but it's pretty cool. And I wouldn't even mention the P3 fatality, because that's just, you know, that's just god awful. And in Mortal Kombat 2, there were already rumors about, you know, being able to do so-called animalities, where your character would transform into an animal and just rip your opponent apart. Now, in Mortal Kombat 3, they have actually introduced that, but however, due to the memory limitations, they couldn't do, you know, proper animation for them. And by the end result, I wouldn't want to waste time on it. It was just plain shit. So I think it's still a good idea in terms of fatalities. I mean, it can be shocking and it can look cool, but not this way. So that was a problem. And the other thing that I almost forgot to mention was the introduction of a new type of sub-boss, being the Centaurs and Motaro. I loved Goro in Mortal Kombat 1. I loved the whole Shokan thing, and when I just first saw Kintaro and first fought against him and first got my ass handed to me by him, I was, you know, just blown away by the whole, you know, Shokan thing, Kintaro, Goro, everything. So I was, you know, wow, those are the best characters ever, and those were actually pretty much that made Mortal Kombat for me, and added a lot to the atmosphere. However, in Mortal Kombat 3, they just got rid of them, and they introduced a new sub-boss called Motaro. And although I think he looked cool, he was the biggest character so far in terms of size in Mortal Kombat. He was even bigger than Kintaro. However, he was pretty stupid and easy to beat. And the other thing I didn't like about him was that the stage that you would fight him on the balcony stage. I mean, they just should have made, you know, some sort of arena like the one they had for Kintaro or something like that. I mean, it was just, you know, like, you know, for me, like fighting the sub-boss in the kitchen, or I don't know. The balcony stage is, you know, it's just, you know, too dark and there's nothing there, so it's not interesting at all. And due to the new combo system, and since Motaro was basically a sucker for combos, he was pretty easy to bring down. Although he could sometimes be a bitch in, you know, on the third level or on master and in hard mode. And I also would like to, you know, point out, not the arcade version but the Sega Saturn version, which I had already reviewed. On that version, Motaro kicks ass, and, you know, he's really a hard guy to beat down, but not in the actual arcade. So he was an okay guy, and I think it's fucked up that they haven't, you know, put him into Mortal Kombat 9. I mean, even though it's, you know, only one character and the whole, you know, motion system is set up for bipedal figures, they just, you know, should have taken that extra mile and fucking put him into the game, because he deserves to be there, and he's really one of the memorable characters. He's not as great as Kintaro or Goro, but still he was a great sub-boss. I mean, you know, just think of Moloch in Deadly Alliance, and you know, just, you know, ridiculous. I mean, Moloch was, I don't know, I wouldn't even, you know, regard him as a proper sub-boss, or I don't know what the hell he was. He just basically, for me, looked like, you know, some sort of stupid fat dog with a bowling goon in his hand. So it was just crazy. But Motaro was really cool, and I think he was sort of right cast for Mortal Kombat 3. So anyway, I've been going about this, you know, for pretty long. I'm gonna be doing a similar one for Mortal Kombat 2 as well, and hopefully for Mortal Kombat 1 too. So stay tuned, and see you next time.